Welcome to Braindrop by VCOM Solutions. Each episode, we talk to IT leaders and experts, explore recent projects, and learn from their triumphs and challenges. We hope today's episode provides you with a unique window into the world of IT, where creativity meets problem solving and technology drives businesses forward. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo. Now let's drop into today's conversation. Today on Braindrop by VCOM Solutions, I am joined by John Paul Murphy. John Paul Murphy is a seasoned tech leader, heading a number of IT and business applications teams throughout his career. For him, creating value for the organization is all about being impact-driven, and we'll dive more into that on this episode.
I'm looking forward to chatting about all this.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast, for sure. We talked before this a lot about IT and tech and kind of your life within that, but there's more to life than just our job and what we do. So other than IT and tech, what kind of fills your time and your life?
Yeah. So I'd say I have two orange cats that are prototypical orange cats. They're crazy and they're always doing silly kind of stupid things, to be honest, but they're a blast to have around and a ton of entertainment with them. And I also I love golf. I'm a very competitive person and grew up playing sports. And as I got older, can't play as many sports as you used to. So golf has been a great outlet for me to still lean into that competitive side, but get outside and really just, enjoy something that is exceptionally low tech to decompress from work.
I like the phrase low tech, just the opposite of the rest of your life. Do you have a favorite, a favorite golf player?
I'm going to go with just the very cliche Tiger Woods, he's the GOAT. It's hard to choose anyone else, but there's a lot of great players now. I think if you follow professional golf, there's it's very exciting. So, but Tiger Woods is number one.
Yeah, you kind of have to say that. I agree, for sure. And I'm curious because I foster cats and I've had all different types of colors of cats, and obviously every cat has their own personality, and yet everything you always hear is that orange cats are crazy. And do you know why that is?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even pretend to understand, but they're little clowns, and I grew up with dogs. I got cats. Life is a little bit easier when you have cats than dogs, and they're a treat. Sure. But they're very quirky.
Yeah. Well, which is so fascinating. I think, I have a dog and also foster cats. And I think both have their own distinct personalities, and each dog and each cat has their own distinct personality. But there's something like cats to me that's always just fascinating to watch them do their own life. I'm just yeah, you are weird for sure. And smart at the same time. So, well, thank you for that. But let's jump into the meat. So how exactly did you get started in tech?
I think the answer, if you really look at it, it's I got started in tech because, my mom was a teacher and she had access to computers when I was a kid. And, after school, I went to her school. I went to school around the corner and, every day I was playing with computers and didn't have really any guidance or anything. So it was really just learning on your own pace and kind of figured it out. And from there, as I got older, I really leaned into it. And when I decided to go to school for undergrad, and I chose information systems because, when you're at that age, you're not sure exactly what you want to do, but I know that technology is going to influence pretty much every part of business. So it was at Loyola, and it was a great opportunity to really get, training on systems, distributed architecture. How do you really scale technology within an organization? How do you work with data in an effective, meaningful way? And from there, my first job was actually as a COBOL programmer, which is a, very nuanced skill. And from there, I really just kept leaning into different roles in technology. And it's been a really exciting experience because you get to work with so many different people in an organization when you're on the tech side of the house. Whether it's on a business systems role, a data role, or more of a traditional IT role, you're able to work behind the scenes. You get to understand what's making an organization work or what isn't working with an organization. So that's kind of where it all started for me. And from there, it's been, working at different organizations, whether it's been startups or large, multinational enterprises. There's something to learn everywhere, and it's been great for that.
Yeah, before this, we talked about, you went to school for information systems, and which is a kind of strangely enough, a very unique experience when I'm talking to information IT leaders or tech leaders in general, where most of them like, oh, it kind of fell into my lap later, or I realized it. But for you, it's been there from the get-go. That being said, we also talked about how IT and tech are not synonymous terms. And I have a few questions to that, but could you elaborate on that? And I think it's a very obvious sort of statement, but
I'd say
I kind of almost use them interchangeably.
I think it's okay to use those interchangeably. I think though, when you're speaking specifically about IT, I think more and more folks, when they think of IT, are thinking purely of like your sys IT, your help desk, really the teams and capabilities that are core to the functioning of an organization, whether it's, making sure email works or, user access and so on. But tech also, in some organizations, you're going to think about the infrastructure, or if you're a heavy development shop, where then you're thinking maybe of your engineering posture as well. And I'd say also, especially in recent years, the product management is just as an essential and core component of when you're looking at the tech of an organization and the behaviors and capabilities. That function as well is certainly a big part of what makes the tech landscape.
And at least for me, tech, I don't want to out myself here. Tech sounds cool.
Yeah,
it's
better branding. It's better.
Absolutely
it is
better
branding for sure. I think it can be exceptionally dynamic and interesting. In a world where you are also supporting customers directly, IT takes on a whole different significant importance, where your tech teams are delivering value to your customer, whether it's making sure devices work, making sure you have the right lifecycle management. All of those are to complement your core value proposition that you're bringing to your customers. So tech is more than just, the internal help desk team. And IT is just as dynamic. It can be a lot for different organizations.
Yeah, I really love that you said that tech is more than just that, but also IT is no slouch when it comes to its diversity and dynamicism. And also, to say that it's just an IT help desk is kind of diminutive, right? There's something incredible about customer service and the ability to help other people at that juncture, for sure.
I think there's something exceptionally powerful about being able to help your teammates, right? He talked about like if I have a competitive streak, let's say, and working in IT allows me to unblock, allow my teammates to do their respective jobs the best they can without disruption, whether it's someone in finance, someone in operations, regardless of the role in the org. IT and IT help desk is able to provide significant value on what might be, value, like say high impact, high value, could be a low effort task, but it doesn't matter, because for an end user that's blocked by something, when you remove that, it's super powerful.
On the flip side, though, and I've talked to a few other guests about this, IT can also be the reason for blockage and for necessary causes because of cybersecurity and needing to kind of protect things. How do you balance that sort of, we want to give you freedom and unblock, but also educate and say, but there are things we do need to block? How do you make that all seamless? And I know that's probably a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I'd say, there's a lot can come from making sure you're communicating with empathy. So as you're approaching stakeholders and saying, we can't do XYZ because we have to implement a policy, or because, the uplift to or the level of effort to deliver is, let's say, going to be disruptive to normal business operations. Um, I'd say that as an IT leader, as a tech leader, you need to ensure that you're communicating with empathy. You're demonstrating why this is a disruption, why there's a block, but also being able to paint the picture of when it will be relieved, what is the course of action you're taking, and when are the expectations that you can set with your stakeholders. I'd say it's especially important to also give options. So we can do XYZ, we can do option 1, 2, or 3, and paint as much of a picture around what those decisions really mean. Oftentimes, the stakeholders who are influencing these decisions have incomplete perspective. And so, as a tech leader, it's really important to try to educate so that when a decision is made, your stakeholders might not love the decision, but they at least understand or have a confidence in what they're choosing. And that's, I think, one thing that I see, especially with junior IT leaders, is that the outcome is so obvious, but they haven't really taken the time to lean in and educate the rest of the stakeholders and their peers that I need to come with them on the journey for solving the problem.
Yeah, and this is a big thing that a lot of leaders have really talked about is this, and I guess this is what makes or breaks a good leader, right? Is that communication. You, however, studied at Loyola information systems, and maybe by some magic they also taught like business communication, but I can't imagine so. You could correct me if I'm wrong. If that's the case, then where did you kind of learn, the other aspect of IT and tech?
Yeah.
Business?
I'd say I've had some really good managers along the way, who've been able to, not just be your typical manager, but really be mentors and really help, round out skills and gaps in, what I had going into the workforce, especially younger in my career. I'd say also too, if my background might be a little bit different, is where I had a stint doing consulting, and working in consulting, you are, for lack of a better, I want to say force if you're going to be good at consulting, right? You're in front of a client who's paying you to be there. Communication is essential, whether it's not just oral communication, how you present information, whether it's in slide decks or report of findings type documentation. It's essential. It's essential to develop those skills. And I'll be candid when I say it's one of those things where you put your time in. You have to learn it. You have to get better. Have awareness to see who does this well when you're junior in your career or even senior career. Right? There's never stop learning, and figure out what they do well and emulate it and get comfortable with that until you can make it your own and it's incorporated into the way you operate naturally.
Yeah. So interesting because communication is a very soft skill. I noticed that sometimes people look at people and go, oh man, they're a really naturally good speaker. The way they communicate just comes so easy to them. And I guess you just don't see behind the scenes the amount of effort that really goes into making sure that happens. Because not one, but you also have to be on your game, right? In order to communicate with empathy, you need to be in a really almost stable place. If you're emotional, like anybody can be, you might react in a way that you don't want to react or say things that you don't want to say. And so it requires not just the knowledge of how to communicate, but really taking care of yourself so that you are in a space where you can communicate. So there's so much that goes into that as a leader, for sure. Any thoughts in addition to that?
No, I think like it is important to know when your emotions might be like running hot. And so it's okay to go take a walk, and come back and reply. Or, if you are second guessing a response, that's usually like a good indicator that maybe you need to reread it or rethink about it, or even call out, this is not intended to be critical of you. This is just what I'm observing, and speak with an honest, open, perspective. I'd say being very outcome oriented is a really solid way to remove the emotions. I'm looking to accomplish X, you're looking to accomplish Y. How do we come together to find a solution that works well for both of us? And work, compromise is not a bad thing. I think it's one of those areas that it's important to find mutually agreeable solutions. It's important to ensure that everyone's buying in. And it's also really important to think incrementally. As you think about solving problems, you might want to solve everything, or you might think you know how to solve everything in a moment. But it's very important to use data and very objective measures to say, I'm going to solve this and it'll move the needle here. And we're going to come back to this and incrementally chip away at it. And that, helps build momentum. And it also helps other people understand over time what you're trying to accomplish. If it's just not resonating at the start of an initiative or, some other project.
Yeah, you kind of take the big picture approach to come up with the long-term plan, but to get there, that's the outcome. And to get there, you create almost smaller outcomes along the way to pulse check too, to make sure that the outcome is the right outcome you want to reach at the end of the day too, instead of doing it all at once, maybe wasting all that time, and then not also getting that incremental feedback to really improve it along the way, making the outcome a lot better, which is why compromise is so good, right?
Yeah, I think like if you look at, product management as a sort of as its own, let's say art within an organization, product managers do it exceptionally. Like good product managers do this really well, right? They find the problem. They have very objective instrumentation that tells them how large the problem is, and they just iterate. And I think that's an approach that works really well, regardless if it's product management, whether it's IT. To a certain extent, IT is really like B2E product management, business to employee in product management. And
exactly. Yeah.
And so there is a power in looking at whether disciplines are leveraging and see how you can, again, make it work for you. It's, like pattern recognition, right? Like what works well one place, can I emulate and make it work for me?
Yeah, I love how you said that B2E, business to employee, because if we treat it like that, and this is a huge thing that is happening now in the IT department specifically, is the IT department is being asked to sit at the table almost and be a part of those huge instrumental decisions that move the business forward, especially because tech is such a central part of it. I can believe that you are a great communicator, and I think that's rule number one to being a good marketer, if you will. I am on the marketing team, and so I really understand this a little bit. But as IT leaders kind of transition into a role of not just operating behind the curtain and just doing what needs to be done, but also advocating for things they believe should be done to move the company forward. What's kind of, we've talked about it a little bit. What's kind of your advice to kind of make that happen, to successfully market your needs to the business?
Yeah, I think like one of the areas that is when you are rising up and you're now in a point where you are trying to influence the growth trajectory of an organization, whether it's through people, process, or technology, you need to be looking at problems that are going to resonate across multiple functions. So there is a propensity of IT, of investing in IT for IT's sake. And that isn't going to work when you are trying to think about the 2-year to 5-year growth trajectory of an org and what needs to be solved between then. It's really important to look at problems that are meaningful, that if you're being honest, how do you solve the problem? And sometimes you have to, even as an IT leader, accept that a low tech approach is the right approach for some period of time. And that you need to ensure what you're advocating for is the outcome that's best for the let's say macro level of the org, not just a specific department, which might be your department. And as you're making these decisions, it's really important to ensure that what you're advocating for is also aligns with where your peers are trying to push their segments of the organization. Um, in IT, we own individual outcomes, but we're essential for cross-functional outcomes as well. And as you're thinking about where the organization's going, you're looking at those top line strategies that the board of directors is pushing, and you have to say, okay, who should I be partnering with to really build a cohesive vision for the uplift that we're going to provide? Whether that's, we're going to make sure that customer service is the essential pillar of the business. You should be working with that stakeholder to understand their perspective and views of where the challenges are. And then from, experience being a tech-minded individual, to be very honest about what tech is going to work and what isn't. Do you have the right platforms in place? Do you have the right data in place? Data like instrumentation in place? That is essential for really making plans that resonate versus just saying arbitrarily, like, we should get this tool because it's the better tool. Like, that's just, that doesn't work when you're trying to form that vision with your peers at the leadership level.
I actually struggled with this personally, where it was almost that shiny gear syndrome, right? Like, oh, that's better than what I currently have, so I'll just get it, rather than flipping and going, what are the problems that I have that I cannot solve with my current tech that I would then need to invest in something else in the future to get? So rather than working backwards and rather than working normally and getting something and then figuring out how it would work, it makes way more sense, saves more money, and is more productive to figure out your problem and work backwards.
And I'd say also too, we've come out of the era of grow at all costs, right? That is, we're in a very different era. And so it's really important as a leader in the tech space to lean into your vendors, and not just from getting better pricing, but it's also, how do you get the right type of demo or POCs? How do you mitigate the risk of investment by either more upfront work or getting, let's say opt-outs built into your contracts, consolidating platforms, challenging the SKUs that you're buying within core platforms. There's certain large, CRM player out there who has a bajillion SKUs that will love to sell you everything and anything. And as you are looking objectively at what you're really using and the impact it's driving, the time that your business stakeholders or members of the IT team are burning to support a platform, you have to sometimes also make very what might seem like unpopular recommendations about consolidation or outright just abandoning sort of the use of certain systems. But again, it's always through the lens of, I'm trying to get you to your end goal, and this is my recommendation. And again, it's the recommendation in partnership is really important. If you're overly combative or are too forceful, you're going to alienate people, and then you're taking what is a cross-functional work stream and you're making it overly IT. And in the process, you're not going to be 100% successful because you might lose track of the needs of your core stakeholders.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good listening, meeting people where they're at, and that compromise that we go back to for sure in order for all of that to really happen. I like how you said, you lean into your vendors, rather than think you can do it all yourself. There are people that you work with for a reason, and it's almost cliche to say, but we work better together, right? There are things that they can see that you can't,
Exactly.
for sure, and vice versa. And being able to leverage that is kind of, why wouldn't you, right? And I think there's almost this thing we're hinting at, which is, that release of ego, right? That you think you can do it all on your own, and realizing, no, the job will get done better, which ultimately gives you more credit when you lean into other people who have different expertises. Absolutely. It's almost ironic though, because tech moves fast. It moves faster than any other industry, any other department. The reason why so many other industries are moving so fast is because tech is moving fast. I think a guest once said it's like finance isn't moving fast, fintech is. Healthcare isn't moving fast, healthcare tech is. And that is something we need to kind of keep in mind. But conversely, I think something I've seen in a lot of IT and tech is that fast movement. Oh, look at the cattail.
Yeah,
that
making an appearance. I knew you would.
So cute. So cute. I'm keeping that in. The
That's
world
fine.
deserves to see that.
That's Galileo.
Oh, Galileo. What's the other cat's name?
The other orange one is Paloma.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful names.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
But tech moves fast. In order to move fast, though, this is kind of a rough transition, but in order to move fast, you have to move slow. If that
smooth,
is clear.
like smooth as fast.
Smooth as fast, right? Exactly. Where it's, yes, getting that tech solution could probably get to your desired result fast, except you have people involved. And so if you move too fast, people get alienated. Like you said, it becomes too IT heavy. People start to get frustrated with that change. And I've met some people who get really frustrated that they have to move at a slower pace in order to get what they want done, even though they know that it will, even though they know it will end up better in the long run, right? That whole solution. I don't really have a question for you in that regard, but it is just kind of an interesting concept that you're kind of really harping on, which is, yes, like there are solutions, but it's not just the solution. It's being able to get everyone into that solution. So when the change happens, there's less resistance.
Yeah. I think a big part of it also is really how organizations approach prioritization, right? You think of at the most top level, we're still relatively new into 2024. So either your organization has finalized its 2024 plans late last year, or maybe it's buttoning it up and everyone is now sort of moving in the direction of what has been prioritized. As you're looking at prioritization, that's an opportunity to say, okay, this is what we need to make sure we're moving fast on. And I would say, especially in recent years, speed has been, speed to impact has been the sort of the number one driver for determining success on large scale IT or tech initiatives. It's really important, I think, to try to move as fast as you can in a responsible manner. And when I say responsible manner, it's not burning out your team. So then you have attrition risk, right? And then you have to hire and that creates more problems. Or not moving so fast that you deliver the perfect solution, but your enablement partners aren't able to ensure that the end users are able to use the features or capabilities. There is so much that goes in to delivering an impactful initiative that speed is a component of that, but also making sure you are bringing along all the right people throughout that process. And at the speed that they can work at is the speed you have to move. And so sometimes, it's resource constraints that slow us down. Sometimes it's the procurement motion, right? Getting through the commercials with a new vendor, lining on, T's and C's, getting the just right pricing. There's a million things that can slow you down. So, and some of it is in your control and some of it isn't. So for the things that are preventable, like the preventable errors, I always stress with my team, like that's what we need to focus on, the preventable errors. And how do we make sure that those don't slow us down? That gives us then the bandwidth and ability to react and pivot as we need.
Yeah. We talked about, impact, solutions, empathy a lot, but I kind of want to ask the kind of very simple zinger question, which is, what is impact to you?
For me, I think it's very dependent on what I'm working on or what we're doing. So, a large component as you mature and become more seasoned leader in IT is your career kind of transitions from the ones and zeros to the dollars and cents as it goes forward. And so for me, if I'm thinking about the vendor relationships, I'm thinking about how do I maximize value for my company? how do I ensure that I'm getting the best pricing I can get? How do I ensure I have the right support, guaranteed SLAs? Even advocating directly to vendors is saying, I don't believe I have the right account manager or success manager. I want someone different. I want someone who understands my industry, or someone who understands what it's like to work with a high growth organization. And that's one way to drive impact as a leader. Impact also is how do I ensure, when I think about, we were talking about the IT help desk earlier. Well, one of the ways I measure impact is one, CSAT score. So we run CSAT, make sure that the team is delivering a good experience for our peers. And also, just from a metric standpoint, I'm looking at the number of bugs submitted, number of bugs closed on a rolling basis. And I really want to see that those numbers are as close as possible, because then I know that we're moving things forward and things aren't lingering, right? That's that speed portion, right? If we aren't moving at the speed of the organization, people will know we can be blockers. And so that's really important for an impact. I think on the biz system side, you actually get a little bit closer to the customer experience, which then impact gets a bit more exciting, right? You think about CX systems, right? You ticket reduction, agent handle times, right? These are such meaningful metrics to any organization, regardless of your industry, that when you're influencing those, you're creating a more healthy, sustainable business. And that's super exciting to be part of. You can keep going up funnel, right? You think of your teams that are supporting your core CRM platforms like Salesforce or HubSpot. And those teams are driving, lead to cash type operations. And you're helping, again, create a very sustainable business. And those metrics are very much the same metrics that their peers and stakeholders are holding near and dear, but we're just influencing them in a different way, whether it's enabling a new pricing and packaging capabilities, whether it's being able to automate inbound with bots that help create more leads. I think it's really important that as you're thinking about impact, you're thinking in similar or shared metrics with the stakeholders you're supporting. It's the only way to really ensure that you're working in the same direction. If you hold teams accountable to metrics that don't resonate with the core stakeholders, you're just putting them on a path of conflict where I'm measuring the team and I'm thinking the team's doing great. But if the stakeholders don't think so, then we have a problem.
I love that answer, because I've always, well, not always, but I've struggled with this idea of, okay, yeah, IT can fly over my head a lot of times, and I have to write about it. I have to make content about it. How do I make it interesting? And I think I've just been listening to you, and there are things that you say that I'm like, oh yeah, that's boring stuff, but it's tied directly to an impact, which is always interesting, right? Like you said, it's more exciting. And so if I can go, oh, how can I improve the customer experience? Oh, I have to do this thing. This thing might not be exciting or sexy or fun, but that is.
Yeah.
And that just gets to that. And so being able to connect that, I just think is a really cool way to make IT relevant, if that makes sense. Not that it's not relevant, but to make it relevant.
It's always important to remember that whether you're supporting internal stakeholders or if you're in a role that is applying solutions for your actual customers or partners, is that these are your customers. And reinforcing a customer-centric mindset ensures that you're building a culture around like meeting the needs of the org. And these are, it's not always about, let's say, outright calling that, but it's about really ingraining that into the thought process and how are we prioritizing the initiatives that IT can drive on its own? Are these customer centric? Are these going to really move the needle forward?
Is there a project or a decision that you made, or a few that you were really proud of? It was something that really led to a lot of impact for your organization?
Yes, I would say there has been times, and I don't want to get into too many specifics, but there were times where in my career where we were able to bring forward approaches and solutions that, one, the customer, especially in consulting, the customer didn't think it was possible. There was a time specifically where we were, at first, we didn't know this. The client told us, but we were going up against a super large tech behemoth who had been working on this problem for years. And they told us outright after we, kind of won the business that we were only brought in originally to scare down the price from this large vendor. And to be able to turn around and deliver a prototype and show value on a platform they didn't think was capable of delivering it was a huge one. And it's something that I think about often, where you oftentimes need to trust your frameworks and just solve the problem. And also don't get too caught up in it. I will say sometimes I can sense people getting a little worked up. Is like, we're not going to Mars. This is not, we're not like, most of the things we're solving have been solved before. So we just need to work the problem and figure out where the solution lies and work backwards from there. When I think of other outcomes where I've been especially proud, is looking at some of our core platforms and realizing how process was causing us not to get the most value. And not by changing up the technology, but by really massaging the process a little bit and melding process to get the most out of technology, you come out with a super impactful decision. So thinking about changes to how systems leverage CPQ. CPQ is a pricing capability built into Salesforce. And when configured well, it's awesome. It enables teams. When it's put together poorly, or the implementation team is forced to follow a process that doesn't maximize the capabilities of the technology, you are left with a really rough user experience. So I look back at some of my previous orgs I've worked with, and I think, wow, like we've allowed Salesforce to be like an offensive weapon because we've ensured that the process that was implemented took the most advantage of the technology versus this is my process and now squeeze it into this platform. And certain platforms now are super flexible and they let that process come to fruition. And I'd say as a tech leader, you have to pick your battles, but there's times where you need to challenge and help your stakeholders understand the risks that they might be going towards. And hopefully you're able to influence the decision. There's times where I haven't been, and I look back and I'm like, gosh, I wish we could have. But again, it's your responsibility as a tech leader to help stakeholders make the most informed decision possible.
Yeah, you mentioned, these were some huge wins and there were some things you looked back on and went, oh, I wish that was different. What are some failures or challenges that you've learned from in your career? And what did you learn?
I would say some of the challenges in my career have been, I'd say earlier on, where it was, I need to do this all, right? I talked about earlier in the podcast that leaning on your vendors is really good. And I think that when I look back to my career, 8-9 years ago, I was much more focused on coming up with a solution with my internal teams only and not looking as externally. That certainly is a lesson learned. And I think about I haven't been, I say, how do you become better at your job? It's being honest of where you probably could have done things differently. And I can happily say that I'm much better at my job now than I was 9 years ago.
Which is what you should, which is what you want to be able to say, right?
Yeah.
You want to almost be not ashamed, but you want to look back and go, oh yeah, man, I was not where I am now.
Yeah. And so I think a part of that also too is just from where I was working and the type of work I was doing. I think in consulting, you get so biased to being like the source of all the answers. And there's a pressure there because, you are being paid. Clients are paying a large amount of money for your input. So I think developing the mindset that, like the outcome is more important, and leveraging the ecosystem of experts, of folks around you is definitely the best path forward.
I have two more questions for you because we're almost at time. The first is, if you could have anything you wanted to help you do your job better, what would it be?
I wish I had the ability to leapfrog over prioritization and just had all the resources to say yes to all my stakeholders, yes to all the internal initiatives I would like to source and fund. So I'd say, like, give me an unlimited bucket of headcount and money to go buy the right things, and I would be pretty darn happy.
Such is life, I guess. And to close, this is kind of your soapbox moment, even though the last 45 minutes can be considered a soapbox moment, but this is your real soapbox moment. What are some things that you have learned in your career that you'd like to share with the tech audience to close?
I'd say that it's really important to develop frameworks that are useful for you as an individual, that are useful for managing a team, to be able to build a team, enable them, grow them, is going to be the great differentiator if you want to be a leader in the tech space. There are a lot of phenomenal individual contributors, and there's nothing wrong with that path. I say, like, when I was very junior in my career, I used to, I was working with these individuals that were phenomenal, and it was like, why aren't you a manager, right? And you realize, like, it isn't for everyone, and that's fine. But if you are going to go the path of managing folks, it's really important to create the frameworks that help them do their job best, and be consistent around that. I think human beings thrive with a level of consistency. There can be chaos going around, but if you're approaching a chaotic problem with a familiar way of breaking it down into digestible chunks, that really helps folks. It helps calm stakeholders, helps calm your team down. So I'd say, if you're going to, have a career in IT, it's about, how do you not only manage yourself, but how do you start to manage other individuals in a consistent way that allows them to do their best work and be authentic to themselves.
Exactly. Well, John Paul, thank you so much for your time today. This was a wonderful conversation. I got a lot out of it, and I hope the listeners do too. Thank you again, and take care.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest on Braindrop. Go to vcomsolutions.com/Braindrop guest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.